So, good evening. And I'd like to talk a little bit about the La Palma eruption of 2021. And before we start, I'd like to introduce my mentor, who is here today as well, and that's Professor Juan Carlos Caracedo, who sits here in the front. Juan Carlos is he's a member of the Royal Academy of the Canary Islands, and he was recently named one of the most influential scientists in all of Spain. So it's a privilege to have him here today. So I'd like to talk about the 2021 eruption, which was a very special event because eruptions in the Canary Islands are not quite as frequent as in many other places. Iceland has eruptions every few years, but the Canary Islands, they're more spread out there. And the previous eruption on La Palma was actually 50 years ago, in 1971. I was only half a year old at the time, and this is a once-in-a-lifetime chance for a geologist, for a scientist, to work with eruptions in the Canary Islands. So I'd like to say a few words about the overall tectonic setting, the overall geological setting of the Canary Islands before we go into the details of the eruption. And the Canary Islands, well, it's an archipelago of 7 main islands, and the islands actually have different ages. The oldest islands are in the east, and they are quite flat. They're deeply eroded because they're so old. Wind and rain has taken them down. The central islands, they're a little bit more steep. There is Teide being at the height of evolution. And then we have the very young islands in the western part of the archipelago, La Palma and El Hierro. And we believe that the islands are fed by a stationary melting anomaly in the mantle. And the plate above this stationary anomaly is moving. And it's moving at a pretty slow rate, only about the speed with which your fingernail is growing. But over millions of years, it will create a chain of islands. And the concept is very similar to what we see in Hawaii, but the plate under Hawaii is moving a lot faster, so the chain is more nicely spread out than here in the Canaries. So what we see is the older islands are deeply eroded, the younger islands are pretty steep, and once the island is really, or an island is really heavily grown, then we have something like Teide on Tenerife with 3,715 meters. It's the tallest mountain in all of Spain. But the fate of Teide is, with time, it will be eroded as well. And the fate of La Palma and El Hierro is, they will likely grow for a while longer before they will ultimately be taken down by wind and weather as well. So the heat anomaly that feeds this volcanism sits under La Palma and El Hierro at the moment, and this is where we also have eruptions. And La Palma had several eruptions in historical times. El Hierro had one just about 10 years ago, a submarine eruption. And the idea is that this heat anomaly, and I have a little video, let's see if I can make it work. Yes. So this heat anomaly that started off producing Fuerteventura and Lanzarote, and then Gran Canaria, and then Tenerife, it now sits under these islands, La Palma and El Hierro, and this is why we have a lot of eruptions in this part of the archipelago relative to the other islands. So the geology of La Palma, very briefly, we have an old shield volcano, the Taburiente volcano up in the north, and at about 500, 600,000 years ago, it collapsed. Part of it collapsed into the sea, and after that, a new ridge grew, the Cumbre Vieja ridge. It's named the old ridge, but technically it's actually the young ridge, the new ridge. The term comes from forestry. It means the old forest. So it's a bit misleading at times, but we have 2 volcanoes, if you will, an old extinct one here and a young growing one to the south. And this has been growing for the last 200,000 years, and all volcanic activity on the island that we know of, that we have experienced in historical times, has occurred along the Cumbre Vieja ridge. So here's a little map, and here we have the recorded eruptions. There is the 1585 one, there's the 1712 one, the 1646 one, the 1667 one down here, and then we have the 1949 one, and there's one which is believed to have occurred in 1430, but it wasn't witnessed and recorded in the classical sense, so it's a speculative element there. And then, of course, we have the new one, the 2021 eruption, and all emanate along this ridge and produce lava flows that travel down to the sea, either to the west or the east. And here's an image from the 1949 eruption, an early photograph, and this is one from the 1971 eruption. Both look actually quite similar to what we have seen just last year in the 2021 eruption. So here's a little table of the historical eruptions in the Canary Islands, and half of all the historical eruptions in the Canary Islands happened along this ridge, along the Cumbre Vieja ridge. So most eruptions happen there, and this is the hot spot of volcanic activity in the Canary Islands overall. So what is this ridge made of? Well, there's these feeder dikes, as we call them. These are fractures that allow magma to rise up, and these fractures that guide the magma, they feed vents at the surface. And geologically, every so often, one of these fractures breaks through to the surface and produces a volcano, producing, for example, those here of 1585, 1646, 1712, and then, of course, the younger ones, 1949, 1971, and the latest one just last year. Now, when the eruption happened, it was a big excitement amongst geologists, and well, we were traveling to the island, Juan Carlos and myself and many other colleagues at the time, and you could, oops, let's go back one, you could see the eruption here already from the airplane, and it was piercing through the clouds, and the airplanes wouldn't go anymore to La Palma, so we had to take a ferry, and there was many warning signs. And then on the island, you couldn't actually go too close to the eruption. You had to have special permit, which we acquired, and that allowed us to go eventually very close to the volcano and study the phenomena there. So just a very brief history, and you don't need to read the details. I'm trying to summarize it for you. There was, in fact, heightened earthquake activity since 2017. So scientists had an inkling that something was coming up. It wasn't completely out of the blue. And then in early September 2021, the seismicity increased. So here's a timeline, and this is the earthquake activity given in red, and this jumped up in early September. During the following days, the earthquake intensity was increasing yet more, and it happened mainly at a depth of about 8 to 10 kilometers below the surface. The maximum ground deformation was increasing. The volcano was swelling up by up to 20 centimeters. And then, strangely enough, the volcano fell quiet for 2 days, just to erupt 2 days later. So somehow the magma got stuck, and it was trying to push through, but eventually it found a way, and the earthquakes were rising up very quickly up to the surface, and with quite some intensity. M4 is it's reasonably intense. M4, you can have glasses falling out of the shelves at that earthquake intensity. And the eruption then began on the 19th of September at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and it produced a gas and ash plume of about 3 kilometers height at the time, and it opened up a fissure, a fracture in the ground that was about 500 meters long, and that allowed the magma to erupt. So we also have satellite monitoring these days, and this is information from the satellites. Here we see this rather peculiar pattern of deformation. This was where ground deformation was measured in the days before the eruption, and it allowed scientists to predict approximately where the eruption will happen. And indeed, this is where the volcano eventually formed. So here we have an area that was really migrating towards this point here, allowing the magma to rise up. And there was earthquakes at a depth of about 35 kilometers, and another level of earthquakes at about 10 kilometers depth. And this tells us that there was likely several reservoirs of magma under the volcano that were contributing to this eruption. It's not just one single reservoir, there's several reservoirs of magma, and most likely they're still there, but they will be less full right now. They will not be quite so overpressured after the last eruption. So, and once the eruption started, we had lava coming down the hillside, flowing towards the sea, actually quite fast with enormous speed, and unfortunately, the area was densely populated. The 1971 eruption was in a sparsely populated area, and so was the 1949 eruption. The 1971 eruption was fundamentally different. It was in actually one of the most densely populated areas of the island. So here's a little image from Google Earth, and this is one of the main roads, and you can just about see that White House, and there's another little White House, and here is a photo from one of my PhD students, and here we have this White House, and here we have this White House, and suddenly there was a big volcano growing within just a few weeks. So here is the cone as it is today. This is an image from January, and this is a similar area, day 1 of the eruption, and this is day 87. So the eruption took about 85 days to fully unfold, and this is after the eruption stopped. So you can see the cone that has grown, and it grew to about 350 meters, so with about, on average, 3.5 meters per day. So it's quite fast. And of course, the area affected is still devastated. 1,200 hectares of farmland and private property have been affected, and we estimate that the damage is on the order of about 1,000 million euros in terms of properties and farmland, equipment and buildings. So I'll talk a little bit about the lavas, then I'll talk about the ash, and then I'll talk about the damage in more detail, and then about a few, hopefully, good lessons we can take from it, and a few, hopefully, positive aspects that might eventually come out of this. So the lavas, well, they came down in rivers of lava coming down the hill, and they traveled at quite some speed. And here you can see that this was filling up the low areas, the depressions, wherever the lava was flowing, it was filling up the area. And it didn't really stop in front of any houses or churches or any of this. So there was attempts to save certain buildings, like a little church in Dotoke, but it failed, unfortunately, and the church was taken down despite the best efforts of the local population to dig ditches and try to divert the lava. So here's a few more impressions, and here you see the lava coming down as a wall and filling up driveways and properties. This is the cemetery in Las Manchas, and the lava was cascading over it. And here, we can get some information from the measurements that scientists have taken. The temperature was pretty high. It was 1140 degrees. That was the maximum temperature. And there was a total emitted lava volume of 188 million cubic meters. So this is pretty strong for a small island like La Palma. And as I said, it covered about 1,200 hectares. The maximum accumulation of lava was 70 meters in some of the valleys. So it's pretty thick, and it will still be hot down there at 60, 70 meters of depth right now. And the velocity of the lava was pretty high at 30 kilometers per hour. So this is about the speed of a moped. You would have found it difficult to run away from it if you were in the path of the lava. So the maximum magnitude of earthquakes was up to 4, and this is strong enough to make your bed shake at night or have some glasses removed from the shelves. So here is one of the early images from the lava. This was one of the early days when Juan Carlos and myself were able to go close. And here is a little video, and hopefully I can make this work. And at that kind of proximity, you can actually feel the heat. So there's a wall of heat coming towards you, and you can see that it's really more than 10 meters high, and yeah, glowing fragments of lava are falling down, so you can't get too close, obviously, because there may be balls of lava rolling towards you if you happen to be too close. We were all scared, but it's part of the job. So that's me, actually. And Harry, my former PhD student, he recorded it. So, and yeah, here's a few images of the lava field. This was in October 2021, and this is taken from a high point, La Laguna Hill, and you see the volcano out here and the lava spreading out into various areas, but it was flowing around La Laguna Hill, and this is the same spot just in December 21, and I'll just go back and forwards a little, and you see how the lava spread out, filling the entire area. And these banana plantations here, well, they didn't make it. And these houses and banana plantations here, well, most of them didn't make it either. So if you kind of look then from the coast towards the island's interior, this is actually not the volcano, this is an older cone around which the lava was flowing, but then it looks like this. So I was able to go on top of it. This was in January. This was about 4 weeks after the eruption stopped. So in the southern edge of it, in the western edge of it, you were able to go onto the lava, and it's very blocky there, and it's a huge lava field. So we use a lot of information these days, including satellite information, and the Copernicus satellite system, the European satellite system. It allows us to map the distribution of lavas. And here's a timeline. I don't want to go into details, but it started 20th of September, the red area, and then it was progressing towards this pink area at the very end. So the lava field was growing, and eventually it had developed different tongues or lobes, and they were reaching the sea in several places, one here and eventually also one here. So here is the early lava from 20th September, just a day after the eruption started, and the area in beige color is the final extent of the lava field. So here's a panoramic map, and here we have some of the older eruptions, the 1949 one, 1585 one, and the 1712 one, and this is the 2021 eruption. And it's in style actually very similar to the old eruptions, but it was actually affecting a slightly less steep area, so the lava spread out a little more, and this area was densely populated, as I said before. This was very unfortunate, but geologically it was not very different to previous eruptions. So here's just another kind of image with a bit more information, and you see these areas here are more steep, so the lava was running down in more narrow channels, while here it spread out. Very unfortunate indeed. So, and here just a few more impressions. The lower map here is what I'd like to draw your attention to. This is a thickness map, and here you can see the lava thickness, and the yellow areas are maximum thickness, more than 50 meters thick, and here in the center of the lava field we have extreme thicknesses up to 70 meters, and again here at the shore as well. The outer margins of the lava field, there the lava is a lot thinner, and already work has begun to dig back into the lava field to create new roads, and I'll talk a little bit about that later. Now, we also had the opportunity to sample the lava, and Juan Carlos and myself, we were approached by the BBC, and they sent a camera team, and so we actually had to deal with the fire brigade, the BBC, and the lava. It was quite stressful, actually, and eventually we got rid of all of these people, and we did it ourselves, and this is some impressions. So there's Juan Carlos, here's myself, and we just took a stick and we did it ourselves, and it was a lot easier. And there's Harry Geiger, my former PhD student, quenching some of the lava. So, of course, you're not supposed to approach this, but we did. And it worked quite well. Nobody got injured. And here is a little impression. Again, I have a clip here. So this was some of the samples we retrieved. And we had to cool them down. They were too hot to touch. And you may just about be able to see this says 500 degrees. Well, this laser thermometer, it actually stops at 500 degrees. It was a lot hotter than that. But the information was don't touch it before you quench it. So I'd like to talk a little bit about the lava deltas, these eruptions. Oops. This happened during the test run, and I was told I should go and escape and try once more. So we're back, very good. So the lava deltas, this is how new land is created, and this is how the islands grow laterally. And here we have an image from during the eruption. The lava deltas grew yet further, and here we have the information that the lava reached the sea first time September 28th, and it was actually cutting off several areas, unfortunately, and I'll mention that a little bit later on. And it's produced about 50 hectare of new kind of area, and what's going to happen with that, we don't know yet. It's owned by the Spanish government. Some people want to put fields on it, other people want to put hotels on it, other people want to make a volcano park. Well, we will see. So, and this is just this panoramic view again, just very briefly. We had one lobe here and one lobe here spreading out, and unfortunately it created this island of undisturbed area in between. And you couldn't go there from there, you couldn't go there from here. So actually the Spanish Navy is taking people there now because you can't walk over the lava, it's still too warm. And this is also a very unfortunate situation of this particular eruption. So let's see if I can make this work. Yes, so this is progress of the lava with time, at least from the early part of the eruption, and it was hitting this hill and then was flowing around this pre-existing volcanic cone to eventually make this little lava delta. So this is how the lava delta looked like during the eruption, and I should point out that this is intriguing because you see red hot lava coming down here, you see it here, but you lose it in between. And that means that there's lava tunnels in the lava field. And once they have cooled and drained out, I'm sure they will be spectacular to walk through, but not in the next few months, I would think. So this is right at the edge of the cliff of La Palma, and Juan Carlos and myself, we were able to go there through one of the banana plantations, and here you see the lava, and then it cascaded down, making this lava delta. And we, of course, took samples for chemical analysis from there, and this is rather a spectacular sight, really being right on the edge of the cascading lava. And this is me posing as a volcano hero. And here we are at the area where the lava came down the hillside, and this is a view from above where we can view this new lava delta. You still can't walk on it, so I'm just at safe distance there in the photo, as you can probably tell. So, and this lava delta is not completely unusual because all these areas here in the Cumbre Vieja western flank, they're all lava deltas of older eruptions. And as you see, they're full of greenhouses. So the local farmers really love these lava deltas for making banana plantations. But I'm not sure whether they will get this one, but we will see. So now I'd like to talk about Ash and Lapilli. Here's Juan Carlos walking on one of the main streets, LP 212. You can't see much of LP 212. It's covered in ash, and here's a little property partly covered in ash as well. So this is a main road actually on the island, and well, at the moment it's cut by lava here, and it's completely covered with ash, meter thick. So this is a house close to LP 212, and there's not a lot visible right now apart from the chimneys. And here's a few other properties just to give you an impression, and many of them, well, were intensely covered. So here's a little shed in a vineyard, and this is pretty close to the vent side, and here you see the thickness of material, and many roofs like the one here actually collapsed because of the weight of the ash. And here you see the ash plume, and it's taken to the south here towards Funcaliente, which is about here. And what happens is that the jet of material is pushed up, and eventually it reaches some sort of equilibrium, and the wind takes over and pushes the cloud towards a certain direction together with the wind. But the particles, and particularly the gases, can travel for far long distances. And some of the gases were even measured in South America. Some of the particles were measured in mainland Europe. So these can travel for long distances, which is not unusual, because if you think of the Sahara winds, they bring particles all the way to South America as well. So ash particles would be affected by the same process. So here's a little video, and this is to give you a sense of how ash fall feels. See the little particles falling through the air? And here's the volcano doing its thing. The sound is actually little stony ash particles hitting the screen of the car. And maybe we'll skip this. Oh no, sorry. This is the volcano rumbling. So, and this is close to the vent site. This is the village of San Nicolas, and well, you can see the goal on the soccer pitch is half covered, and some of these road signs, well, they're barely visible at this point. And here's just a sampling site where we tried to sample ash in a stratigraphic sequence from the youngest to the oldest, and you see it's quite a thick cover of ash in many places there. And back in the laboratory, we of course look at these particles, and you can see here the ash is really spiny, and this makes it very dangerous to inhale. And these are some larger particles, but the tiniest particles are also very spiny. How does it work? Well, if you have bubbles growing in the volcanic vent, and the bubbles become so big that they burst, then you have the little kind of spiny bits left. So effectively what these little spiny bits mean is that there was a bubble, and you see a bubble here inside this particle as well. So the problem with those is if you inhale them, you can't get them out anymore. They are in your lungs, and this was a key problem in the areas affected. So, but there was also this rather intriguing phenomena of large blocks coming down the volcano, rolling lava bombs, and there was these images from 1677, and it seemed that some of the locals at the time portrayed this phenomenon, but of course we all forgot about this or didn't interpret it correctly. But what we then realized is that there's big chunks of glowing material rolling down all the way from the volcano, and we were lucky enough to catch one on video. It's like a cannonball. It's unstoppable if you're in its way. So, and this is what we saw when we went closer. Oops.
Go.
Let me know you can break the tire.
Hang on.
So, and yeah, well, the thing with these rolling bombs is that volcanologists get trained very early to not run away from them. It's very dangerous to run away from them. It's more like being a goalkeeper in soccer. You have to actually watch it coming, and then you step away. So if you are running away and it comes after you, then you have no control over the situation. So we did the right thing by just watching it coming and making sure that we would step away. Oh, it gave up on me again. But I'd like to talk very briefly now about the craters. There were several craters active at the same time, and here's a few images from the night, and it was, of course, magnificent to watch, despite the fact that it was, of course, a real disaster for the local population. But as a volcanologist, you have these mixed feelings because there's something just spectacular about it, of course, as well. So, and this is the vents from above, from the hillside, and this is as close as we were allowed to go during the eruption. And here you see that there was one vent active here, one here, a main vent here, and another one here. So there was multi-vent activity along this fracture. And this is how the volcano looked in January, and this is when you approach it. And in January, after the eruption stopped, I was bold enough to go there. And here, this is how it looks from the west, and you have these sulfurous areas. I approached it from behind, and I took a few photos, of course. This is how it looked when you approach it from the Cumbre Vieja side. Well, it's an area of devastation. I mean, the trees are stripped bare of any foliage, and here we have several of the craters, and this is how it looks when you get close enough. And I was bold enough to take a sample of sulfur here, but I didn't dare to go any closer than that. So, and here's some of the sulfur that I sampled in the crater area. Here's little droplets of native sulfur. They were liquid, and that means they were deposited at several hundred degrees, and they're now in the laboratory in Stockholm for chemical analysis, for isotope analysis, which will tell us something about the actual origin of the magma and the gases that the volcano has been forming from. So I'd like to talk a little bit about the damage, because this is the reality. We have to think about this. So this is the entire lava field, and the eruption lasted for 85 days. That means a lot of people were affected, had loss of income in that time, and it also meant a lot of support was required. Fire brigade, police force, Red Cross, etc., etc. Many kind of support organizations from the mainland, from Spain, were called in, and this was a huge financial effort. Almost 8,000 people were evacuated, more than 2,800 buildings were destroyed. That includes 1,300 homes and about 1,500 utility buildings. Almost 1,000 hectares of plantation land were destroyed, much of it irrecoverably. And about 70 kilometers of vital roads were affected and were taken out by the eruption. But the real good news is no direct loss of human life, which is a real achievement. Nobody died. There was one strange case of a volunteer who went into the exclusion zone volunteering to clean up, but he snuck away from the group and went to the house of his daughter, and somehow he must have gotten into a gas trap, and this was likely a fatal situation for this particular person because he was unsupervised. It shouldn't have happened, but this is something that is almost unavoidable. But it was not a direct result of the volcano. It was because somebody actually broke the rules. So And the damage is on the order of about 1,000 million euro, all in all. So here's just a few impressions. This is an older volcanic hill, and this was before the eruption, and this is Montaña Dodoque after the eruption. You see it's almost completely enveloped by lava. And I showed these similar images before. This was in October, this was in December, and you can see how the area was gradually, progressively covered with lava. And here we have what we call a kibuka. It's a Hawaiian term. It means a little island flown around by lava. And here we have some houses. Looks quite nice, actually. But of course, there's lava on either side of it, so you can't go there anymore, at least not at the present day. So this is from Las Manchas Cemetery, and here we have lava cascading over the cemetery, and it's quite a grim sight, actually. So then we have some of the buildings that got destroyed, and here we have lava coming down, taking out electric cables, and also blocking roads, of course. And here's another video. Hopefully this will work fine. So, and this was the little house that was in front of this lava flow, and well, we had the privilege, in inverted commas, to watch the fate of this house because the lava was approaching relatively slowly. We were at safe distance, but now here's the video of the fate of the house. So there's Juan Carlos just in the front. And the house got eventually buried. There's myself, but we wouldn't want to go any closer at that point because obviously this is getting very dangerous. And just a second after that, our gas tank in the house actually exploded. And we were luckily far away, or sufficiently far away, but there was actually a secondary explosion at this house as well. So, and yeah, this is then how the whole situation continued after the explosion. You see the electric cables are burning, the house is covered, everything is burning, and this is now buried under a thick cover of lava. So here's a few more impressions of the advance of the lava flow, and here it's approaching some houses, and of course it would set things ablaze. Here's a car that was burning out. And here's a few more examples. There's a wheelie bin. There's a rubbish bin, and it got half burned, half it's still intact, and it was just at the margin of the lava. And cars seem to not do well in lava. They burn out really strongly. There's a lot of flammable material in cars, and then the temperature gets as hot that it even melts the glass of the windows. So here's one car that was caught up in the lava flow, and you may just about see the lava here is very rubbly, but just over the car, it's actually different in texture. It was flowing a lot easier because the car, when it was burning, was actually heating the lava. And then the lava could flow particularly nicely around that car. Intriguing phenomenon, I have to say. So, and of course, the lava hit many of the plantations, and here you see the edge of a lava flow hitting a plantation. And the plantations, well, the lava's buried about 370 hectares, and the ash buried about 1,000 hectares. So a lot of plantation land was destroyed. Traffic, well, a lot of roads were taken out, and many of the vital roads were going through here and through here, connecting the north and south of the island, and they were completely destroyed, and by phenomena like this. And here's another kind of situation from La Laguna village, where the lava crept into the village. And this was our first realization what's going on when we looked at the situation there. It was literally the end of the road. So, and then of course we approached it at the very edge. It was cool enough to actually work with the samples, and there we are taking some samples. The tree actually didn't make it. I went back there a few months later, and my wife was asking, has the tree survived? And I had to report, unfortunately not. So, and here's another road that was taken out, and here it's a thinner lava cover, but of course it's not usable at this point. And what happened is that in order to get to this place down here, Portonaos, the authorities have built a new section of road here to connect this and this road, because you couldn't go around there anymore. And we've driven this road, Juan Carlos and myself, in January, and this is this very new section of road, brand new. It was a virgin road. We were some of the first people to drive on it, and there it is. It did cost about €1.5 million, I understand, just to connect these two, but now at least these areas can be accessed again. So, and I mentioned this before, this area here is rather awkward because you can't really go there this way anymore. You can't come from the north either. So the Spanish Navy is bringing farmers and property owners in there to collect things and at least maintain the fields to a certain degree. And this area here on the thickness map, this is problematic. But sooner I would hope that this lobe has cooled down, and then there will likely be a new road being put through that lava lobe there to access this area again. So ash cover, just a few impressions now. It's quite intense. Here's some houses that were close to the vent areas, and here's a few more impressions. And of course, one of the key issues is that the ash affects the drainage. So this is, a sink in one of the plantations. I guess the farm workers were washing their hands there. But I guess you get the idea. These things will go into the plumbing system, and that's a huge problem. And particularly if it rains, it washes things down, blocks everything, and this is a real problem. So, and the thickness of the ash on houses was quite intense. So here you can see it was so thick that you could actually walk onto the roof without having to take any stairs. And this particular house, it was quite shocking. This was in October, this was in December, and a vent opened up just in front of it as well. So I think the people owning that house, well, I think they have enough of volcanoes for quite some time. So this was our refuge, our kind of lunch shelter in October 27th. There's Juan Carlos, and there's the volcano. Because there was heavy ashfall, we were trying to find a place where we could shelter from the falling particles. And when we went back in December, we realized that the roof had collapsed from the weight of the ash. So here's another building in Las Manchas, and this was just a thin kind of metal roof, and the ash was so thick, and you can see about the thickness of the ash here, that the roof just collapsed in. And eventually, when the eruption subsided, the cleanup started, and the giant cleanup, as I call it here. First of all, the roads had to be cleared, and this is some of the results now. So the roads were cleared by diggers, and then I actually think that's a video, yes. So you can get a feel here for how it looks going through the evacuation zone. As I said, not everybody was allowed in. It was a bit like a war zone, actually. Only military and emergency personnel was allowed in, and some selected scientists.
So they have been dumping all the ash. Wow.
So you see the thickness of the ash.
The snow piles from clearing the roads.
And the volcano in the background up there.
It does look a little angry today.
Yes, he did look angry that day. So, and then the cleanup, well, here people are trying to rescue properties. There is a family trying to rescue one of the old cars out of the ash, and you see the cover of ash on the car. So, and now the effort is enormous, to be honest. I mean, great respect to all the workers there. Oh, once more. So, and here driveways are cleared out, houses are cleared out, and here you see a little digger, small and bigger ones as well, and then the ash is collected and it's transported to various collection points. Here the church in San Nicolas is cleared out, and this is the church square after being cleared out. I mean, certain areas need to be shuffled out, but this one was cleared with a digger. And here you see that the efforts of the roads are pretty advanced by now, and some areas still need some small scale cleanup. Oops. No, we didn't. I was keen to go, but time was unfortunately not sufficient to go all the way. It's about an hour's drive. So this is one of the bus stations that has been cleared out in Las Manchas village. And this is one of the ash collecting sites. You see the trucks bringing the ash, and they're building an artificial mountain of ash now. So here you see it being piled up. It's quite a large area. And the residents are now allowed back in most areas. And here you see an elderly lady inspecting her house, and one of the official people looking that the house is actually safe before the lady was allowed in. And the lady started an argument. We were watching it, and she said, the house is safe. And the official person said, I'm not sure. So, but eventually she was allowed in. So, new opportunities, just a very few final words. Well, current discussions include the new land could be used for agriculture or for tourism, and we're not quite clear. Maybe it's going to be a mix of things. Then there's also discussion about creating a volcano or a geopark, and certainly I would go there and visit. And the ash could be useful as agricultural supplement. Oops. The ash could be useful as an agricultural supplement, or it could actually be used to be an aggregate in cement, concrete, and it could be used for helping with making roads. So the material is not completely useless. So the pileup of ash will likely yield some economic return. But of course, it doesn't fix the damage done, but not all the ash is just a nuisance. There may actually be uses for it in the long run. So, and the final point really, and this is the fundamental lesson, the big challenge for scientists here, I think the good thing is that scientists are now able to predict the eruption and to make sure that nobody gets seriously hurt in canary eruptions. But the financial loss, that's the big problem. And here, some huge amount of work has to be done. The good news is that this is the area that was eventually affected by the volcano, and the colored area was a prediction from the first day of the eruption. And you'll see it's pretty good. It's actually not perfect, but pretty good. So the idea is that scientists are okay, once they know where the volcano is, to predict the potential damage. And there's some cases from Latin America, for example. It's a bit small here, but you can maybe just about see these are dollar signs. So here certain areas can be given a value. And that means ultimately you should be able to have insurances against volcano. And I think that's the big thing. To protect the population of financial ruin, I think insurance is what needs to be done now. That's the big challenge ahead. Because if the volcano erupts, your house is taken out, but you get refunded. It's not so bad. But if you lose all your livelihood, that's a real disaster. So I think this is the next step where geologists have to work together with insurances in order to make this a possibility. And then hopefully these eruptions will become spectacular features of nature rather than disasters. So thank you very much for your attention. Some of the clips, if you're interested, they're on YouTube, on my channel. So have a look if you like. Thank you.